Nigeria's economy has witnessed major changes from various policies that have been implemented by the federal government. In oil and gas, we have seen the conclusion of the historic IOC divestment, ushering in a new chapter of indigenous strength and capacity in our energy industry. We have also welcomed a $5 billion FID from Shell in the Bonga North Deepwater project, alongside several new gas supply agreements that will transform the LNG market both domestically and for export. In the first half of 2025, Nigeria-China trade surged to $15.48 billion, a 34.7% increase compared to the same period in 2024. This comes almost exactly a year after our bilateral relations with China were upgraded to a comprehensive strategic partnership at the 2024 Forum on China-Africa Cooperation. We've also had 4 landmark tax bills passed, the single largest fiscal reform in our recent history. Joining us on the show as we take a look at the Nigerian economy as we mark 65 years is Idika Kalu, former Minister of Finance and Coordinating Minister of the Economy of Nigeria. Good morning, and you're most welcome to the morning show.
Good morning, sir. Dr. Idika
Good morning.
Kalu. Yes,
morning.
excellent.
To be with you this Independence Day.
Happy Independence Day anniversary to you, sir. Well, very quickly, I mean, you have been in charge of budget in this country. You have been in charge of finance. You have been in charge of the economy of the country. Now, only this morning, when the President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, was addressing Nigerians, the economy, his economic reforms, formed a major part of his presentation. About reserve, about fuel subsidy removal, about foreign exchange adjustments, the floating of the naira. But you have been very critical about the management, implementation of the forex subsidy removal, about the creation of development commissions, and the whole development orientation, reform orientation of the Bola Ahmed Tinubu administration. Do you agree with them that Nigeria has turned the corner for the better, the worst is over, and that there is hope ahead of us in the immediate future?
Well, Dr. Abate, I hear you. I'm not quite sure you are not putting a little bit more strongly than I have expressed some of these issues in the past. Well, I was contacted just yesterday. I have put down some points about this whole issue. I have about 11 points. The reason I did that is that very often, once you are described as an economist, you are expected to narrowly discuss economics. But in fact, as we should know very well in this country, economics sits in the context of so many other issues. For instance, I have identified the issue of security. You can see that security is a very key issue. Affects issue of transportation, which means if there's no security, there are likely to be problems. People go to the farms, to the offices, to their industries, and so on. And of course, the issue of health. I'll just itemize this and I'll get back to your question. And of course, the key issue of education, this whole sense of whether we are really moving forward or we have lost grounds on education, which means the development of manpower at various levels. Of course, the square thing then on the management of the economy, the macro policies, the micro policies, and so on. And of course, I've not listed this in any particular order, but just to show that all these issues are interconnected. Then the issue of the role of the rule of law. The rule of law is essential in any economy, where we should all be seen as being equal before the law, and issues verging on human rights and freedoms for everybody. The 7th point I made is infrastructure. As we know, you are just talking about power. Talk about power, water, and of course other means of other infrastructures that are so essential. And then of course the whole general area of how we are developing our institutions. You've mentioned the central bank, the ministries, and then, of course, the 3 arms of government, or rather, we can say the 4 arms of government. So we can include also the mighty press, where we talk about the executive branch, the legislative branch, the judiciary, and of course the press. The next one I identified is accountability. In the course of your discussion now, you did talk about accountability. It's so important. And then last but certainly not the least is the whole issue of identity, culture, traditions, how we see ourselves in other areas outside the issue of just market and production and selling. And of course, you cannot see that these are all the things that should go into a properly structured constitution. I'm just saying all this as a prelude to whatever questions one wants to answer as regards what the president has said this morning. Unfortunately, I didn't have the time, I didn't have the opportunity, I should say, to listen to his whole speech. But right after this program, I'm sure I'm going to look for it and the whole speech. Turning the corner, yes, I think we have to structure this along the lines I have just said. Nigeria has always been seen as a major producer, a major exporter, a major player. And even in the field of sports, you can see how some Nigerians must have felt. You saw Botswana winning the 4x100 meters at the last games in Europe. You know, Nigeria has seemed to have dominated that, but you see that we've sort of calmed down quite a list, even though we still have a few key sportsmen and women. So we should not delude ourselves. We should really take stock in a very realistic way to really assess where we are now. I agree with Tanko. I listened to Tanko talk about the shared differences when you look at pre-1960 and post-1960. Yes, we've come a long way. But you know that in another 20, 25 years, as I like to cite, we are supposed to be number 3 in population with over 450 million and perhaps among the top 12 in terms of gross domestic product without going into the structure of that product and so on. So it's a big challenge. So we should be very tough on ourselves in assessing where we are and how far we still have to go. Blessed with so much manpower, resources, minerals, solid, and other resources and so on. So we have to be tough on ourselves in setting the standards right. Absolutely. So this would be my general reaction before I go to the details of what you really mean by how we now can talk briefly about hope and expect that these things will be realized. We know it will be realized because we have what it takes. That's where the Constitution comes in, how we organize ourselves, how we sustain the macroeconomic indicators, how we sustain the value of the Naira to make sure that it reflects the decision by the marketplace. So we don't go into some of the mistakes we made in the past.
All right, thank you so much,
So let me just stop there so I can take your specific questions.
All right.
Given that general background.
Brilliant. Thank you. Thank you very much, sir. Now, you talked about manpower, and I'm glad you touched on that because the president also spoke about the youth population being the greatest asset that Nigeria has. Now, in a recent report, the Nigerian Youth Report by Plan International in working with Action Aid, they put youth and unemployment at 53%. We have a huge youth unemployment crisis, I mean, perhaps general unemployment problem on our hands. As we begin to look forward and come out of this, the painful period, as the president puts it, how can we begin to ensure that we tackle this challenge of unemployment on a large scale and youth unemployment so that we're able to, harness this population, these assets that the president often talks about?
Yes, as you saw me list these 10 or 11 items, they're all interconnected. If you looked at the youth unemployment or underemployment, you can all really say that we have a crisis on our hands for precisely what I just said. Now, you cannot look at a solution without going back to what is happening in the basic primary sectors, for say agriculture. From agriculture, you go to primary processing, then you go into manufacturing, then you go into infrastructure. All the structures that need to be built, primary to the tertiary sectors. And that is where the education also comes in. When the youth are properly equipped, you can see that our youth are doing very well. Everywhere in the world, Nigerians are all over the place. So if they are properly educated, if they are properly given the skills, even when the unemployment, as it were, say in the public sector or in the basic private sectors, a little bit on the low side, the fact that they are already equipped to be able to do things for themselves. So you see how those are interconnected. I think the issue of unemployment is a very key question. You just look at some of the industries, basic industries we try to set up, whether you are talking about paper or textiles, and so on and so forth. We have them all over the place. The steel industry, and so on. A lot of these things migrated abroad. I don't know how many are coming back because of policy flip-flops and so on and so forth. So there again, you can identify in a concrete form why the unemployment is very, very serious. We can't just solve it at the macro level and say we are going to provide more jobs. Well, that is the usual way. And of course, in everything I say, we are looking at the entire 65-year period of our independence. We are not here to lampoon any particular regime as such. But I think we are here to make suggestions that will enable those who now wield power in the public domain, those in the private sector, those that are managing our various heavy infrastructures, to know that things have to be well organized. We are going to make a dent on youth unemployment. So it is a very key area, but we cannot deal with it in our isolation.
Okay. Sir, have we really turned the corner, or our 65 years have been dogged by a lot of failure? Do you know, and these are empirical facts, that...
Well, you know...
Oh, I'm coming. I want to land on my question, sir. I want to land on my question.
You've turned the corner. I gave a talk recently.
I have not landed on my question, sir.
A little provocative.
I have not landed on my question, sir.
In which particular sector or subsector
sir,
can we
I have not
honestly
landed.
say, like the Americans would say, that we've got it
Hello,
under
sir.
our belt?
Can you hear me?
You know, yes.
I have
Are
not
you
land-
hearing what I'm saying?
Yes, I have
said
not landed.
To
I've not
define
even asked-
turning the corner.
No, I have not
is a
asked my
very
question. I
risky
was just about to ask it. Please.
Oh, I heard you and I was answering. I'm sorry.
No. Just hold on a minute. I say, are we turning the corner, or we are being dogged by failure? Do you know that, sir, in this country, 72% of our entire rail network was built before independence? Out of the over 4,000 kilometers of rail we have today, over 3,000 was built before independence. So from independence to date, we've just managed a little over 1,000 kilometers. Secondly, in the last 40 years, we've not been able to increase our power production. We've hovered around 4,000 to 5,000 to 6,000 megawatts. Insecurity has gotten worse over the last 60 years. So what have we done as a nation?
Well, you just picked two key areas, which I also have in my notes, but I don't want to go into all those details. I might just remind you, I was in the Ministry of Transport for a short while. We started the whole question of mass transit. Mass transit essentially connotes railways. Some of the issues that were brought up at that time was building a fast train, the kind that has been all over the place for the last 50 years in many countries. From, say, Lagos all the way to the north, to Abuja, Kaduna, and even veering southeastwards to, say, Plateau, Benue. Another line, major line, this is mass fast transit rail, was to go from Lagos through the southern states all the way to Calabar. If we had done that, things should have been completed by 1992. And of course, that will have given us about, 23 years to now do the intermodal connections between the inner cities, inner ports, and so on and so forth. So as I said, you picked a very important key issue when I say, well, which area can really say we have got under our belt? Without rail, without massive rail, safe rail, the whole issue of security takes a different form, where people can safely travel distances fast enough from Lagos to Abuja, Abuja to Port Harcourt to Aba, Aba through Onitsha to Lagos and so on, and of course up Ilorin and so on. By this time, by 65 years after, and as I said, this is not to ignore the little successes we've had, but let's be frank with ourselves. And as you have clearly underlined, railway, and we have to do it. We cannot get away for a country size, the shared distribution of resources, agriculture, mineral, industrial products, and so on. We have to build the railways as an easy way of transporting passengers, goods, oil and petroleum products, food produce from the villages to the cities, from the ports, and of course to export. So that is a very important point. Well, you just picked the second, almost as important, which is power. Well, we have solar that we are all very much involved with now. At one point, we even delve into nuclear power by having reactors on one or two campuses a few years ago that we should have really built on. We've got coal, we've got hydro, and of course, on top of it all, we have oil and gas. So it is quite amazing that we are still where we are in power. You see, when you take all these key areas one by one, then the whole question of at what threshold should we be talking about turning the corner? With all due respect to the comments that have been made. Of course, Mr. President is right to inspire us with hope, because if we don't go dealing within the macro area I'm looking at it, you might say, well, people might get depressed and all that. But we are not in the process of making ourselves depressed. We know we can do it. Nigerian population is vibrant. They are trainable. They have the skills. They are in various countries all over the world. But as you rightly pointed out, we have to pick some of these key infrastructures. Information delivery, I think we've done very well in there, but can we sustain it unless we have the high rate of growth of the economy that will enhance people access to information?
Okay, on that.
And once you have access to information, that is a way you can more or less mobilize to address this other more so-called hard sectors. So I agree with you that rail and power are key areas. And if you just look at those two, there is no way we can say we have got to the corner, let alone turning that corner. We have quite a ways to go.
Okay, on that note, sir, we would like to thank you very much for joining us on the morning show today.